So the Rebbe rubs to Zoy Zayin. The Rebbe explained that basically the idea of Peres, Chamisha Osar, Bishvat, is an inyan of Tainug, which is shaykhs to Limud HaTorah versus mitzvahs, and also to the idea of two levels of Torah, which is the level of Achita, which is also, according to one opinion, Min Ilon, which is the level of Torah as it's connected to the level of mitzvahs. And here the Rebbe is going to explain that also we are mamshich, the Tainug, which is from Peres, we're also mamshich it in the level of Torah, also to the level of mitzvahs. Mitzvahs basically are on the level of an avodas eved, that Kabbalah soil, yira. That's the level of soirim, as the Rebbe brought down before, that the level of the Chag Pesach is mainly the idea of soirim, but the Torah eventually, and the level of Atzeres, which we daven for the Peres Elon, as he brought down before, it has the both in Yonim, it has the Torah in its purity, l'shem Torah atzmo, and then there's Torah the way it directs us how to do the mitzvahs. So now the Rebbe is going to explain that from the Tainug of Torah, we're also mamshechit in the avodah of Kabbalah soil and the avodah of mitzvahs. Zayin. V'yashloimar, so we can say that al yidei shehamitzvahs nimshochos me'aTorah. The mitzvahs extend from Torah. So if Torah is Tainug, and mitzvahs come from Torah, and the idea that you have to work with Kabbalah's oil, with an Eved, Avodas Eved, where does that say? That also says in Torah. V'gam zeh shekiyum ha-mitzvahs tzorich liyis b'derech Avodas Eved. Also this idea that the mitzvahs have to be observed, performed in a way of avodas of an eved. Where does that come from? Because the Torah says that you should serve Hashem Elokeichem. So the avodah for mitzvahs in a way of avodas eved is written in the Torah. Al yidei zeh. So through this is nimshach me'ein hatainug the Torah, similar of the tainug that consists in the Torah, gam ba'avodah the Kabbalah soil, also in the avodah of accepting the yoke, which is the mitzvahs with Kabbalah soil, which is avodas eved shebekima mitzvahs, the necessary avodah, serving like a slave, accepting the yoke, which is in the observance of the mitzvahs. So since it comes from the Torah, and the Torah instructs us that there has to be avodas eved, is nimshach from that tainug in the avodah of Kabbalah's oil, which is in the kiyum mitzvahs. It brings al derech hamevur behemshech tofreish samach vov, similar to what is explained in the hemshech of tofreish samach vov. The zeh shegam eved poshut, even the eved poshut, basically a very simple slave, which means not an eved that has some recognition in the greatness of his master, but he is just a simple slave, which means he serves because there's the yoke of the master which is upon him, he basically has no choice. He has to do the work. So why would even such an eved mishtadel, he puts an effort, that the work that he does, that the simple eved does, he is putting in effort, that work tia linoy ulitiferes la'adono. It should be beautiful. It should be colorful for his master. It should be beautiful work. Why would he want the work to be beautiful? So explains in the Maimer in Hemshech Samach Vov, who lifishagam eved haposhut yesh lo tainuk b'ha avoda, because also the simple slave, he also has a delight in his service. Even though he is working as an eved poshut, he does it because he is afraid and he has the yoke of the master on him. That's why he's doing it. But he too has the level of pleasure. How so? Elo shahatainuk de'eved haposhut, who this delight that this simple slave has is loy mitzad inyonei umitziuse shel ha'eved, is not because of the aspect and the existence of the Eved. It's not his idea that he, from the perspective of an Eved, has delight. El Adrab. But the contrary, the reason he has a delight in the work is not because of himself. It's mitzad habitl shaloi. It's because of his subjugation, because of his lack of self. His bittel of his entity. Since he is not, doesn't consider himself, he is bottled to the other, he is not an entity by himself. That's why the delight that the master has is his delight. So his delight becomes the master's delight, which means he's a non-entity. But since his master is delighting in this, what he is accomplishing, and since he is no entity for himself, that makes him delight as well. So this will also explain to us in Avodas Hashem that we're saying that also in mitzvah there is me'ein tainug. Avodas Hashem shebeha the kabbalah soil yesh gam inyan hatainug. That also in the avodah of accepting the yoke, there's also the concept, the idea. There's also pleasure there. There's also delight. Elo shehatainug. What is that pleasure that manifests itself when you do mitzvahs with bittul, with Kabbalah soil? It's not his tainug, but it's the tainug de l'mayla. This is the tainug of Hashem, that because he is bottled to Hashem in a level of an eved, is Hashem's delight becomes his delight. How does delight come in the avodah Kabbalah soil? Because it's nimshach from the Torah, because this mitzvah, the avaditem, that there has to be, comes from Torah, and therefore that transfers that delight from Torah into this avodah seven as well. The yesh loymar, and we can say, shegam beho avodah de kabbalah soil yesh inyan hatainu. This, that also in this service of accepting the yoke, we have this concept, the idea that there is tainug, there is the light over there. Is because also this service that you have to accept the yoke and you have to serve Hashem like an eved. The mitzvahs are done in a way of accepting the yoke. That also comes from Torah. Shahat Torah Amra. Because it's the Torah that says, "Va'avadetem es Hashem Elokeichem goymer." you should serve an eved, avodah, and memela, that's why the tainug of Torah is nimshach in the avodah of Kabbalah and the mitzvahs. Rabbi explains now in Oisches, Hu, and what is this idea over here? And the Rebbe is going to medayik also in the level, in that what we find in the Geras HaKodesh, in Dibur HaMaschil, in the Geras HaKodesh, in the letter that starts with the words Miras Korishlu. Eberster would say to David HaMelech, you are calling the Torah's Miras a song, and that's why Zmiris Hoyli Chukecha. David HaMelech said Zmiris, that the Eberster statues were Zmiris to him. So the Eberster says, Zmiris Korislu, you're calling them Zmiris. And that's why he was nanish. He was punished. So what is the pshat? There he explains that the level of Zmiris is only a lower level. Torah has a much higher level. But what is the idea of Zmiris Korislu? What is the idea of the specialty of Torah, which David HaMelech calls Zmiris? So there it says, Shekol ha'ilameis al yonim v'tachtoinim tluyim b'digduk mitzvah. That all the worlds, the upper and the lower worlds, the whole h'tshלא hinge on a particular of a mitzvah, which basically we know that every mitzvah we do impacts all the worlds. In order to do a mitzvah properly, you have to follow the exact details of the mitzvah. If you don't follow the exact details of how the mitzvah is to perform, you didn't do a mitzvah. And if you didn't do the mitzvah, you did not impact the entire Seder Ishtalshlus. And therefore, the power of a mitzvah is not of a mitzvah, of a dikduk mitzvah. A little point of the mitzvah makes a difference in the whole. So you see the power of the mitzvah. That's the praise of the mitzvah that David praised. That would again, shekol ha'ilamis, that all the worlds, the upper worlds and lower worlds, tuluyim, bedigduk, mitzvah, are all hinging on a particular detail of a mitzvah. Maybe the Alter Rebbe brings two examples of two mitzvahs in which it would make a difference. One of them, a korban, has to be precisely, the din of a korban has to be followed. And also the mitzvah of tefillin that has to be followed precisely in order for the korban to do its mitzvah, to be a mitzvah, and in order for the tefillin to be a mitzvah, you need the details. The Rebbe's father, Hagon, the Rebbe Levi Yitzchok, he explains in his notes, in his orders for the Tanya, why does the Alter Rebbe give an example of these two particular mitzvahs, korban and tefillin, to say that digduk is important for all of the mitzvah, so impacts the whole world. So why these two mitzvahs? The reason that he grabs as an example of these two mitzvahs of korban and tefillah is kikol inyan ha-mitzvahs hu ha'alo v'hamshach. Because kiklal inyan hamitzvahs, generally, what are mitzvahs? Mitzvahs is to elevate and to bring down. Elevate the world, the sparks that are below, and to bring down godliness from above, which is the level of rotzoi v'shoiv. Rotzoi is to go up, run, and shoiv is the return, which is why is the Pora Aduma called the Chukas HaTorah? Because in a general way, the mitzvah Pora Aduma has these two ideas of Rotzei V'Shoiv, which is the general theme of all mitzvahs. That's why this is Chukas HaTorah, as the Alter Rebbe explains there in Likutei Torah. Belochein Tofas Beis Mitzvahs Elu. That's why he grabs an example of these two mitzvahs. Ki korban hu halo. Korban is the elevation. That's the rotzui. Utefillin hu hamshocha. Tefillin is the hamshocha, which is the shuv. Kama shekosu b'likutei Torah b'drusha nesach. So, while this is a interesting explanation that this is Rotzev Yishuv, but why is it important in the Maimer when we're trying to talk about the praise that Zmiris Kodesh Luhu and how all the mitzvahs are tolu yunadikduk echad? Why do we have to bring down this general theme that mitzvahs are Rotzev Yishuv? How does that connect to the explanation in the Igeres HaKodesh that it's Kodesh Luhu, because of the general idea that mitzvahs are Rotzev Yishuv? Tzorich lahavin. The Rebbe asks, so we need to understand Ma negeya leho inyan hamevur b'Igeres HaKodesh anal. What is it connect to the idea that's explained in the above mentioned holy letter? Shakol ha'olam tluyim b'digduk mitzvah, that all of the world hinges on a particular of a mitzvah. Lerame, so here we also bring down she'inyan hamitzvah so alo v'hamshoche, that the inyan of mitzvahs is alo v'hamshoche. Why is that connected to bring down the general idea of mitzvahs, that it's alo and hamshoche? Here the Rebbe is going to explain that there is Torah and there's mitzvahs. We talk about digduke Torah and digduke mitzvahs. The mitzvah is already the way we do it, comes out to us, the instruction. But the digduk comes from Torah. The Rebbe is bringing this back to the idea that the mitzvahs come from Torah too. Let's see inside. Yesh loymar. We can say this that he explains in the Igeres HaKodesh, shekol ha'olam tluyim b'digduk mitzvah, that all the worlds hinge on a particular of a mitzvah, which is how to perform a mitzvah. Who said that is an introduction to what he writes following this. He says, not only are the worlds hinging on one particular mitzvah, but he says there, Shekol ha'olamos betelim b'metzias legabe digduk echad medigduke Torah. So here we're talking already two things. We're saying here that the worlds are bottle, they're non-existent. We're not saying just that they're hinging on a digduk mitzvah. We're saying that the worlds are totally bottle b'mitzias. And we're not saying mitzvah, but here we're saying legabe digduk echad medigduke Torah. Not digduk mitzvahs, from a digduk Torah, that the worlds are bottle b'mitzias legabe one particular Torah. Omar David, When David says, "Midas hoyalichu kecho," your statues have been a song to me, he wasn't talking about the mitzvahs. He was talking about the Torah. As it brings down, we're talking about the praise of the Torah, that the Torah is midas hoyalichu kecho. So we got to go a step further than just saying that the mitzvahs are totally bedikduk echad shel divrei sofrim, but we want to explain how it's shvacha deraisa. That is a praise of Torah. The first in the beginning of Igeres HaKodesh, he says that this was the shvacha of the Torah, the Eiraisa. What is the praise? Shekol ha'olames b'teilim b'metzias, that all worlds are totally negated out of their existence. They're not just that they are hinging, relative, not though they're hanging. And whether they'll be an Elui or not be an Elui, everything in the world, because what the mitzvahs performs, not only are they hinging relative to one particular of the particulars of the Torah, but what happens is, in Torah, they're all but. How is this recognized that the world is bottled to Torah? One digduk of Torah that's all bottled, not just Luyin. It is recognized because the mitzvah manifests itself specifically as the instruction of the Torah. This revelation of Torah that the world is bottled by mitzvahs, that's how we see it, because the world hinges, if there's going to be an aliyah, if the korban and the tefillin are going to work, it depends on the dikduk mitzvahs. Behainu. That is like this. The legabe ha-mitzvahs shehem tzivuyim laha'adam. When we talk about mitzvahs, which are instructions to the person, how a person needs to conduct himself in the world, it's a mitzvah for the person. So so relative to mitzvahs, there is a relationship, there is some sort of comparison, and the world takes up space there. So because the mitzvah is for the person in the world, how we should be in the world. So there is a connection. We can't say that it's bottled by mitzvahs, because relative to mitzvahs, there is a tfisas makom lo'elamis. But when we say that the world are bottled from the existence, and this is dafke, where it's bottled, it's a one digduk of the digduk of Torah. Over there, the world is not existent. It's bottled b'mitzias, that's the gabe Torah. The gabe mitzvahs is not bottled b'mitzias, it's tluyim. That's the proof that it's bottled from the Torah, because the mitzvahs come based on the instruction of the Torah. The proof that the whole world is bottled is because all the world hinge on the particular of the mitzvahs. This that the worlds hinge on a particular mitzvah, even if it's a very light, a small, a non-seemingly important particular, digduk Torah, is because it's a digduk of the Torah. Relative to the Torah, there is no existence of the world relative to Torah. They're totally subjugated. And therefore, Gam le'achrei shenimshech b'mitzvahs v'nasa digduk mitzvah. So therefore, even after that Torah digduk extends and it goes down into the actual mitzvah to perform the mitzvah, v'nasa digduk mitzvah. From a digduk Torah, it becomes a digduk mitzvahs. Kol ha'olam masluim, but they're still hinged on it. It's not connected to the world, but because it comes from the digduk Torah, so when it comes to digduk mitzvahs, it's called ha'olam masluim. And now the Rebbe goes back to explain what he asked on the explanation from Levi, from his father, about the two example of Rotzi v'Shoiv. What is that connected? Because that inyan, that idea that the Rotzi v'Shoiv, that is because they feel the source in Torah, because we're explaining now the mitzvahs as they come from Torah. Let's look inside. In order to explain שגם לאחרי המשוחס דקדוקי תורה במצוות, that even after you draw down the particulars of Torah into mitzvahs, in the duke mitzvahs, meir bahem begilu inyan haTorah, there still shines in them revelation of Torah, and that's why the whole world depends on that, because of the bittul of the world relative to Torah, which gets nimshach in the mitzvah. So therefore, the world is still bottled, is tluyim boy, is merames begeres hakodesh. So that's why he hints it in the holy letters, in that David's miras karis on the letter out there, habos hadugmois, the korban tefillin, by bringing the examples of korban tefillin, of korban and tefillin. That what? And that example tells us that the idea of mitzvah is Allah v'amshocha rotze v'shoif. So he gives us this hint in order to understand how the Digduk Torah comes and gets extended into the mitzvahs. The Yeshloimar, because we can say she'inyan ha'aloh v'harotzu sheb'mitzvahs, the idea that there is the elevation and the run in the mitzvahs, what that part is, who shenirgash bahem mekoirom kemoishahem betoiro shalamayla mehoilam, it is that in the mitzvahs is felt their source as they are in Torah, which is higher than the world. Torah is higher than the world, total bittul, but the fact that the mitzvahs have the idea of rotzei, it's because they feel the source that is higher than them. That brings them the rotzei. And what is the idea of the shuv in the mitzvahs? That they extend to become commands for the person. They come down into the olamas as a command to the person. And also when it becomes a tzivui for the person, still also then is felt in them that their source is in Torah, which is higher than its olamas. So yes, that the original rotzoi is the hamshocha, is the, because they feel the source, and then you bring down, but it doesn't mean that once comes the shuv, and once it's hamshocha, they no longer feel the rotzi, because the idea is kinye rotzi v'shuvhu, because the idea of the rotzi v'shuvhu shagam la'achar hashuv, that even after the return nikar rishuma shel rotzi, we can still feel and sense the mark of the rotzi. So even when they are nimshach to be the mitzvahs tzivuyim la'adam, you feel that they come from their sources in Torah, which is higher than the world. To point out that you say, when you make the bracha of the mitzvahs, you say asher kiddishanu b'mitzvahsov v'tzivonu. We say two things. First of all, you say you sanctified us with the mitzvahs. That sanctity of mitzvah represents the higher level of the way the mitzvahs come from the Torah. And then v'tzivonu represent as it's become into a mitzvah to the person. The Ashloimar, we can say, Shekidishonu b'mitzvosov, hu inyan ha'ala, that is sanctifying us with the mitzvah, that is the halo, that's the level of the rotzei, the elevation she'elonu lemailas kodesh ha'elyin baruch hu, that he elevated us to the level of the supreme kodesh, blessed be he. Shehi kidushosei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chveido b'atzmei. This is the sanctity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu by himself. So you have the level asher kidishonu. You raised us to the Kodesh Elyon, the Eibishter himself covered b'atzmei up till there. That's the part of the mitzvah which we make the bracha asher kidishonu. V'tzivonu hu inyan hamshocha. That's the idea of bringing it down to extending it, that he commanded us. Why do we say in the brach of the mitzvahs, but already the mitzvahs are already given to us, so we're talking about the shuv already, we're talking about our tzivui. Why are we still talking about Asher Kiddushanu? Why do we say Kiddushanu b'mitzvaysav about the halaw of Kodesh HaElyon when we're already making the bracha on the practical mitzvah that we're doing over here after the hamshacha into mitzvahs ha'odom in this world? And the reason we do it is hu kigam la'achrei shetzivonu, because even after we have been commanded, this already hamshacha. They became in commands for a person. They don't lose the reshimu of that aliyah of the rotzu. Hey, mitzvahs of the Kodesh Baruch Hu. They're still the mitzvahs of the Kodesh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He. Moishu Kodeshu Muvdal Me'inyan Hatzivul Odom, as He is holy and distinct and separated from the idea of command to the person. So while we're talking about the command as it's come down, but still, even after we commanded, they still remain in the level of that sanctity of before. Okay, so now he explained that we have this whole idea of Torah by itself and the bittul ha'olamos, that it's non-existent, and that from there comes down into the mitzvahs. And even as they become mitzvahs, they're still connected to the higher level of the mitzvah itself, or the Kodesh HaElyon. So now, Tez v'zehu shal yidei ha'Torah hu hamshochas ha'tainug. Now we see that through Torah, brought down before that the mitzvah of avadetem, of mitzvahs, is also written in Torah, because there is hamshocha of Torah in the mitzvahs. This is dalidei ha'Torah hu hamshochas ha'tainug. We draw down the delight the Kabbalah Soil Shebekima mitzvahs, also in the service of accepting the yoke of Kiyum HaMitzvahs. We bring down the level of Tainug, because we still have the level of Sher Kiddushanu, we still have it all in the mitzvahs, even though it came down into the level of mitzvahs ha'odom and el mazeh. Kizeh shekiyum HaMitzvahs hu ba'ofen the Kabbalah's oil, that the mitzvahs is performed in a way of accepting the yoke, just like a slave who fulfills the mitzvahs of the king. When we say that you're doing it, you're a slave and you're just obeying the orders of the Eibishter, sha'oved hu loy ha'odin, elo shehu bat lodin. The slave is not the master, but he is subjugated to the master. Is Sha'eved is humipnei shakavona be'inyan ha-mitzvahs tzivuyim la'odam. So what is the intention in the whole mitzvahs that we tell a person to bring a person? He sha'odam yiyeh mitzias shechutz mimenu, that the person should be an entity, an existence which is outside of Hashem. He's an eved and not an odin, which means she'ein lo tainug be'elokus. And because he's something different, he doesn't really have a delight in godliness. V'afal pikein yiyeh leilov, and still he should be subjugated to the king, to the melech, to the mitzvahs, to the melech. V'ayidei hamshochas ha'torah shelamaylo mitzvah b'hamitzvahs. But then through the second part, when the Torah extends, the Torah, which is higher than commanding the person, that's in the higher level. When you bring down that level, b'ha mitzvahs, u'b'ha the Kabbalah soil, into the service of Kabbalah soil, because the Torah says you should serve. So that means we're mamshich the mitzvahs of Torah in the level of mitzvahs HaTorah. So then nirgash, so then you sense zeh sheha'adam hu mitzias shechutz mimenu yizbarich, this, that a person is an entity which is outside of him. He's an eved, not the odin, hu bichdei lahashlim hakavon elyono. That is in order to fulfill and to complete the supreme intent that the person should be a Metzias, and then so then when he feels that this is the kavon elyoina for him to be chutz mimenu, you have a bitl the kabbalas oil hu b'chol metzius. So then that subjugation of accepting the yoke becomes an entire existence. Hainu shegam ze shenase k'moi mitzius la'atzmei. So that means that even this, that he appears to be an entity by himself, hu bichdei lahashlam hakavona. So it's all part of the process to fulfill the kavona, that he should appear like an entity, and therefore that becomes part of the kavona. That becomes part of the bitlam. V'lachein hametzias sheloi einay stira la'tainuk sheyesh loi ba'avedosei. And that's why being that he is an entity does not contradict the delight that he has in his service. Hainu l'tainuk ha'adam shenimshechas boi, to the delight of the master that extends in him. It doesn't contradict, because the reason why he is a Metzias is to fulfill the Kavon Elyoina. Because the reason he's a Metzias is in order to fulfill the intent of supreme of the Eibishter. So the fact that he is a Metzias and he's an Eved and not an Odin is in order to have Kabbalah soil. Once that sense feels that that's his purpose, it takes through his whole entity, and therefore being a Metzias does not contradict having Tainug, because the Tainug is not his Tainug. It becomes a Tainug to fulfill the intent. Based on this, we understand that he brought down earlier on Siv Zayin for Hemshech Tofrei Samavov. Dezeh sheho eved mishtadl shamaloch eshet oisem. This, that the slave puts in effort, that the work that he does, Tiya lindoy litiferes ladoina, shall be for beauty, and nice for the master who lifisha yesh loy tainug b'havodo, that he has a delight in the service. But tainug shaloi who tainug odin, and his delight is the tainug of the master. The chayda ain't a move. The chayda is not understood. How could we say that the tainug of the Eved is the tainug of the Odin? The lechayda in a movement, harashayich is the Eved leha Odin. He ledargas Odin sheshayeches elo. He is connected. The Eved is connected to the master, not to all of the master, but to the level of the master in the way it applies to him that connects to him, shaychelov, which is shu meshubed laodin, that he's enslaved to the master. He doesn't have a connection to upper levels of the master, just to the fact that he needs to obey, that he's enslaved to the master. So so how could there be felt in him the tainug of the master, in the beauty and the splendor of the work, that doesn't seemingly have a connection to the enslavement and the subjugation of the Eved to the Odin. It's on a much lower level. The level of the Eved to the Odin, that's the whole connection, that he has to do his work, but not to a delight, which is a higher upper level within the Odin. How does that come to the Eved? So in the way it's in the nimshul, and also comes to the mashal also. That through the bitl of Kabbalah, in other words, the Rebbe says we'll understand it first the way it's in the nimshul in Avodas Hashem, and then it comes from the mashal, because the mashal inevitably comes from the nimshul, because everything comes from the way it's in the nimshul. We know it from the mashal, but here we're explaining the nimshul. We'll get the mashal out of it. Through the bittul of accepting the yoke, where Batla Kabbalah Soil is because the Torah says you shall serve the Goymer. So the bittul that we get from Torah. The Torah says about it. And therefore, hula hashlim hakavone bazeh, that is to complete the intent that Shakodesh Baruch Hu tzimtzim atzmei kavayochel letzaves la'adam, that is to fulfill the intent that Hashem sort of restricted himself, so to speak, and he's going to command the person. So the Torah says, let's avadatem. So it comes a restriction, a tzimtzum, for the person to from the Eberster to command the person. The kavona zu hi b'kodesh baruch hu atzma shelamaylam in that tzimtzum. So this intent, it comes out in a tzivui, but the intent to restrict, to come into a tzivui, that's higher than the tzivui. That's why in that tzivui we also feel the tainug of the Adam himself, because that fulfilling the kavone of the mitzvah to bring it down into a tzivui is higher, and that you sense the tainug ha'odin in the actual action. So the Rebbe asks, how could the Eved reach the level of tainug ha'odam when his connection to the Adam is only in the tzivui? But he says, no, but because the tzivui comes from a place within the Odin himself. And That's why he has a shaykhs to the tainug, to the higher place in the Odin itself. So there is a tainug over the Odin in the Maisa of the Eved that he wants it to be L'noyu L'tiferes. Yud. Bezohu b'chamish osar b'shvat Rosh Hashanah L'ilon. And this is on the 15th of Shvat, which is Rosh Hashanah for the tree. The Ilon Remes al Torah. The tree hints for Torah. He says, Kinal Siv Beis, as the Rebbe brought down, that the Torah is a shaykhs to Atem Kriyim Odom, Odom Eitz HaSodeh, and Talmud Chochem, the Gemara, the Rebbe bring down before in Beis Beis. So now he says that's the connection of Chamish Osir B'Shvat. So b'yoyim zeh nimshach nesinas koyach al kol hashana b'negei le'esek haTorah. On this day, extends the power is given for the entire year as it relates to Esek HaTorah. Rosh Hashanah Le'ilon is Rosh Hashanah for Torah, the power for Torah. Shelimud HaTorah yiyeh b'shkido b'hasmoda. That the study of Torah should be with diligent, with devotion, asmoda, continuous. V'shat Torah sheloimed tiyeh hataynu v'chayil shaloi. And the Torah that he learns should be his delight. That should be his energy. The Ilon Uinyan Tainug, a tree is Tainug, is joy, is delight. As we said before, it's not necessity, not like wheat, not like grain. It is the extra, the pleasure. Nechmad Lamara, he said before, even seeing it. So that should be, the Torah should be, that he learns, should be his delight and his energy. The Elon, who inyan hatainu, kinal sivov. Three is the idea of tainu, I said before, sivov. Api hayedua, and based on what is known, that shekol arba rosh hashanim shayochim zelozed, that all the four Rosh Hashanahs that we said from the Mishnah are connected to each other. Yesh loimar, so we can say the Rosh Hashanah leilon nimshach haneseinach koyach, that on Rosh Hashanah leilon and Chamish Osir B'Shvat also extends the power. Shagam kol ha'inyonim d'avodas ha'odam, that also the other aspects of the person's service, Hanim Shachem Begimel Rosh Hashanah Marishonim, which come through the first three Rosh Hashanahs, Yiyu Metoich Tainug, that all they too should be in a way of delight. The delight that comes on Chamish Osir, the Be'ilon, it's mamshich in the other inyonim that came in the first three Rosh Hashanah. Similar to what we explained earlier in Siftes, Shal Yidei HaTorah, that it's through Torah, Gam HaAvoida the Kabbalas oil, Hibetainuk, that also the work of Kabbalas oil is with delight. So now we're going back to the original question: how come Rosh Hashanah is on the 15th? Rosh Hashanah Lilonis is on the 15th. All the other Rosh Hashanahs on the 1st. On the 1st of the month. Rosh Hashanah Liilon hu b'chamisha osor. It's on the 15th. Rosh Hashanah Shaboyu Shleimus HaLevana, in which the Levana is complete. Beloy ki gimel Rosh Hashanah Marishonim, and not like the first three Rosh Hashanahs. Shehem beresh chodesh, they are on Rosh Chodesh Sha'oz HaLevana Yirak Nekuda. Then the Levana is only in a point. Ki zeh sha'Levana Yirak Nekuda Moire al Inyan Habitl. That points to the level of subjugation. But when we talk about the delight in Avodas Hashem in general, because the Rebbe says that the Rosh Hashanah is the idea, the Chamish Osir B'Shvat is a delight in all of the Avodah. So the Tainuk that's in Avodas Hashem, Ubefrat, Tainuk the Torah, especially, we talk about Tainuk the Torah, which is unique for Chamish Osir B'Shvat. Who inyan hashleimus, that's the idea of fulfillment of wholesomeness, not in the way of nikuda, and that's why it's on the 15th when the levana is on its full shleimus alavon. Through the addition in our actions and our service, especially in the occupation of Torah. In a way, that the Torah becomes the delight and the energy of the person that occupies in Torah. And for sure, through occupying yourself and spreading out the inner parts of Torah, which is the Torah Atzma within Torah itself, what is the level of the light of the Torah? That's the inner part of Torah. So that should also be in total wholesomeness. That it should be seen openly, revealed way, Shekol Yisrael B'nei Melochim, that all Yidden are sons of kings, and they say them as Melochim. And even more than that, they're not just B'nei Melochim. That is B'nei Melochim brought down in the Gemara Shabbos, but the Rebbe brings down from the Tikkun Zohar. We say them as Melochim. They're not only B'nei Melochim, they're Melochim for the Tikkun Zohar. B'nei Yisrael Yitzim B'yad Rama, and then the Yidden go out with an upraised hand, Kimasim LeMelochim, as fitting for kings. Al Yidei David Malko Meshicha, through the king, anointed King David. Now, David Melech Aleim, and my servant David will be king over them. Begeula ha'amitis v'hashleim b'korav mamish, with the true and complete redemption very soon.